Good afternoon and good morning. Thank you for joining today's important discussion. The Harvard Business School Club of Greece has a proud tradition of addressing significant global and local challenges. Today, we will focus on one of the most transformative developments in human history, the revolution in healthcare that is reshaping how we think about health span and longevity. Artificial intelligence and biotechnology are fundamentally altering healthcare, enabling faster, more efficient, and personalized treatments. These advancements offer a future where diseases can be detected earlier, treated more effectively, and even cured in ways we could not have imagined a few years ago. It is my privilege to welcome a visionary leader at the forefront of this transformation. Stephane Bancel, CEO of Moderna and fellow Harvard Business School graduate. Under Stephane's leadership, Moderna has pioneered groundbreaking innovations in mRNA technology, revolutionizing vaccine development and enabling rapid responses to global health crises. Today, we have the extraordinary opportunity to hear Stephane's insights on the future of healthcare, the promise of cancer treatments, and the quest for longevity. His expertise in cutting-edge science and global health leadership will guide us through what lies ahead in this pivotal moment for medicine. First, we will address healthcare. Then we will go into the specifics of the cancer treatment, and then we will address longevity. You are open to send any questions you would like in writing, and I will also ask a few people to join and potentially ask questions. Stephane, thank you very much. I would like to start with one question. Which are the biggest challenges that you foresee for the global health industry in the coming decades, and how the companies can help address these challenges? Thank you, Stephane. Thank you for joining.
Well, good afternoon or good morning, depending where you are. Stelios, thank you so much for the kind words. I'm a bit blushing. Very nice, of course, to be with HBS alumni. I was on campus recently, and I'm going to have my 25th reunion coming up this June. So if you think about healthcare in terms of challenges, I think there's two big challenges in healthcare to stay at 30,000 feet, and I'm happy to go into details. One is really around aging population. And we have, as you know, in Western countries, a very quickly aging population. And this is driving a lot of issues in terms of cost. I just came back from Davos talking to a lot of health minister, finance minister, and the trajectory of healthcare cost is a big issue, of course, for most countries. So that's a challenge. The second challenge is we're making a lot of progress, but we still do not understand a lot about the human body. We've made tremendous progress, and we'll talk about that also as an opportunity, which is the pace of learning about the human body is truly exponential. And I think a lot of drivers are accelerating this as we speak. So it's an exciting time. But the challenge of that is that we don't yet know how the human body entirely works. And so there's still a lot of guessing happening when somebody is sick, and also to see like early stage of diseases.
And Stephane, what do you think will be the next frontier, the next big frontier in healthcare? And how should the companies position themselves to deal with this next big frontier?
Yeah, so if you look at the cause of mortality, you have, of course, up there, cardiac disease and stroke. You have cancer, obviously. you have, infection, whether it's viral infection, uh, pneumonia. So a bunch of infections are out there. And so if you think about in the cardiac space, we have come a long way. Uh, as it's well known, and I know we have a lot of doctors on the call, so I'm going to speak with a lot of humility. Cardiac disease, for most of it, there's still some complex piece like LP little a and stuff like that, where sometimes you see it happened to one of our former employees who, was running the 5K literally 22 minutes at 53 years old, and at 54 years old, he dropped dead. Heart attack, very skinny guy, very athletic. And so you have a few exceptions to the rule, but I would say if people are diagnosed early, are taking treatment that are working pretty well, I think there's a lot of progress that's been done around cardiac prevention and cardiac disease. I put stroke in there. So I think it's more about the medical usage, both by the patient and by the doctors, of a drug compliance testing and stuff like that. I think the place where we are seeing on a daily basis truly scientific revolution is around the immune system, and that has an impact, of course, on cancer. And we'll talk about that later, as you put it. And also, I think autoimmune disease. I think those two fields are being revolutionized as we speak, and I think the next 5 years are going to be really, really interesting for patients.
You are one of the leaders, Stephane, and how do you envision the role of the biotech companies in shaping the future of global health? What do you think will be the defining characteristics for this to become the successful health companies for the future?
So I think the key is to find solutions that governments can afford. Because as we just talked about, there's a massive, budget issue pressurized with the aging of population. And so I think the companies have to really obsess about how do we get the right science to the marketplace and to patients, but how do we rethink about business models and cost, because the current trajectory is just unsustainable. And so I think that's an important piece. I'm a big believer, we'll talk about it later, I assume prevention and pre-disease state. Most diseases don't happen overnight. And so the ability to see disease early and to act on them when they are still at a very early stage is clearly the way to go. But it requires a massive cultural change, both of governments, from a payer standpoint, of a lot of doctors, and I hope I don't offend any doctors on the line. It's not every doctors, but I think a lot of doctors. And then of people, of consumers, to be patients, because I think one thing I tell a lot of my friends is they know more how their iPhone works than how their body works, which is pretty sad because you can, of course, walk into an Apple store and get a new iPhone for $1,000, but you cannot get a new body or a new kidney or a new heart for $1,000. And so I think we need to also move to a world where most people get to be much more curious and much more knowledgeable about their health. I think, again, health GPTs are going to be really, really interesting. But I think the consumer has to take himself or herself in charge to be able to really own their health and not to rely on whenever they are sick with a lot of pain, going to the doctor and hoping the doctor and healthcare system will do a miracle.
And as the world moves towards digital health solutions, how do you foresee the integration of artificial intelligence, data analytics into the mRNA-based therapies or vaccines? Do you use?
Sorry, if you look at, mRNA and ourselves, we have two big, I would say, application of AI and GPTs, and then I'm happy to talk about more doctors and consumers. But at the company level of people making medicines, there's a big push that we have started in 2017, which is using AI, not large language model, but AI, like machine learning systems, to be able to look at a lot of data to invent new drugs. So we've already had success since 2018, actually, of machine learning system literally spitting out a drug to the scientist that none of the scientists have come up with, testing the drug in animal and seeing that the drug is doing exactly what the system is saying the drug will do, that had an insight that even our best scientists, because we have so much data, we're not able to see. So that has started to play out. I know other companies that have in the clinic drugs that have been, again, invented by AI systems. One very interesting company is Generate Bio in Boston. It's a flagship venture company. And then the other piece is around development. I cannot tell you precisely today is developing a drug, i.e. starting from phase 1 study to having an approval. Is that timeline going to shrink by 40%, 50%, 60% over the next 5 years? It's really hard to know. But if you think about it, the whole clinical trial process is basically managing a lot of data, a lot of people, a lot of clinical trial sites, and so on. And so you can start to see a lot of benefit of large language model this time. We are seeing it in our case where we're working, for example, with company Palantir that some of you are familiar with, to accelerate the clinical trial curve uptake, how many people you get in the study by unit of time, by being able to better select sites, by able to use algorithm to enrich the population, meaning selecting some people that's going to have a higher chance of giving you clinical readout quickly. And then there's a lot of business process within the enterprise where we are using large language model, for example, to help us like selecting a dose. In the olden days, it will take a biotech or pharma company roughly, 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to be able to pick the dose that you use for phase 3. Well, now we built a very, very complex system with a lot of data from all drugs and competitive data that have been published and so on. And that process now takes 2 minutes. So again, this goes from 4 to 8 weeks in the olden days to 2 minutes. And so as you think about all those business processes that are between the start of a phase 1 to the data of a phase 3 and the filing to regulator, my guess in the next 5 years is going to be more than 50%, but it's hard to be precise at this stage.
Excellent. Now I will go to the questions on the cancer treatments. And I'm very glad that we're joined by George Soros, which is a model of longevity. Now, the mRNA vaccine field with its COVID vaccine has made a major contribution to human health on a global scale. It really saved millions of lives. You gave an amazing contribution to humanity, Stephane. How does the expertise in mRNA technology apply to cancer treatments?
Sure. So
which type of cancers are you focusing on initially?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the approach we are working on that is currently in phase 3 with very exciting phase 2 data, which I will describe in a minute, is the ability to individualize a drug, that we make a drug just for you, Stelios, or just for me. We started in skin cancer, melanoma, but we are expanding to lung cancer, kidney cancer, bladder cancer, and many more, because the immune system doesn't really care where the cancer cell is, in which organ. In my humble opinion, this is a way of describing cancer that is maybe 100 years old, because we don't have more or better ways at the time to describe the cancer. What we know now is that cancer is a disease of DNA. Cancer is mutation of our DNA from a healthy cell into what becomes a cancer cell, is when you start to see mutation on the 3 gigabyte of data of your DNA. And so the approach we have taken at Moderna, which is quite elegant in my opinion, but obviously I'm very biased, is we take a biopsy from your cancer. So we read all the 3 gigabytes of letter of DNA of your cancer cell. We do the same thing with a healthy cell of your body, most of the time just blood. And we compare letter by letter of DNA, where has mutation happened compared to your, healthy DNA. And based on that, we have a very complex algorithm that we set up with top scientists and doctors from universities around the world that has been reviewed and agreed with the FDA, where basically we select 34 of a mutation that this algorithm picks from the hundreds, sometimes thousands of mutations that you see in your cancer cell. That's very specific to the cancer cell you have. We design within around 30 days right now from the biopsy of your tumor to getting the product in the hospital to inject in your arm. And what we have seen in the clinic is the drug starting to work around the third dose. So those doses are every 3 weeks apart. Around the third dose, you start to see efficacy. And the data is quite exciting. Of course, we have to validate it with phase 3 data, which we are doing right now. But the phase 2 data that was presented at ASCO, the biggest oncology meeting last June, was 3-year survival data of patients with melanoma. You had a group that got Keytruda, the immunotherapy treatment that many of you know from Merck. And the other group had Keytruda and Moderna individualized treatment. And what we've shown is at the 3-year mark after the time of surgery from those people when they got surgery of a melanoma and the treatment right after surgery. So 3 years after, we have 2 out of 3 people, so around 66% of people are metastasis-free, death-free, so they have not died. And so that's compared to those that are getting Keytruda. And again, Keytruda is really the standard of care. So we have to, of course, validate that data with a much larger study. The initial study was 150 people. The phase 3 that is now fully enrolled is 1,000 people. The FDA has agreed that if we can replicate that data, we will be able to file the product for approval. We're expecting data in 26, which will allow for a launch in 27. That's a bit kind of the state of the union. So we think over time it should work in a lot of solid tumor cancer. So this doesn't include blood cancer. We have other things for blood cancer. And the thing that is interesting is if you have early stage cancer, when you get cancer diagnostic, the checkpoint product like Keytruda are not used because the side effects are really, really strong. If you look at the label of those drugs, the label almost reads like all the autoimmune disease known by doctors, because as you basically push the immune system, the good news is when the drug works, you help people tremendously. Some people are in full remission with their cancer. So the drugs, when they work, are really wonderful. But the side effect is because you push the immune system very hard, you end up with a lot of autoimmune disease. As a lot of oncologists, I think, will agree with me, it's better to have an autoimmune disease than being dead because there's a lot of drugs for autoimmune disease. But that's a bit the state of a place. So those drugs, because of a side effect profile, are not used in early stage cancer. Our product is using exactly the same technology as the COVID or RSV vaccine that have been approved. So the side effect that you get basically is you might get a fever for 24 hours or chills or something like this, but nothing like oncology type side effects. And so we believe that, of course, we're going to have to prove it for clinical study, that by being able to go earlier in disease, we actually have a serious shot, especially as you go earlier in disease, people have a stronger immune system. We use people's immune system to go and attack the cancer by teaching them the mutation of their cancer cell. So that's also where we're going, which is earlier in disease. So we are going broader in terms of cancer type and earlier in disease now.
And Stephane, what do you think are the unique advantages that the mRNA offer in the treatment of cancer compared to the traditional methods like chemotherapy and immunotherapy? Which are the real basic differences and advantages?
So I think there are at least two. One is, of course, the individualization, because if you have cancer, Stelios, or I have cancer, and the doctors give us both Keytruda, we're getting the same drug. And so what is interesting about what I said earlier, which is we know today, which we didn't know a while ago, as a field of medicine, that cancer is a disease of DNA, so it's mutation of DNA. And so by our ability to customize a drug just for the mutation of your DNA, if you think about it from a biology theoretical standpoint, this is much better. Our early data in phase 2 show it. We again have to go to prove it at a larger scale for more cancer type and a larger scale for melanoma. But we are fully enrolled. The study is fully enrolled for that. The other thing is the mechanism of action, which is when we inject mRNA in the arm, unlike what most people believe, including us in the very early day of a company, that most of the protein is made in your arm because you got the injection in your arm. Actually, what we have shown is that when you inject mRNA in the arm, the way we did the lipid around it, it actually goes into your lymph node. It goes into your immune cells, and it makes the protein inside your cells, in your immune cells, which if you ask immunologists, is most probably the best way to go after making cancer drugs. And so I think those are the two benefits, the individualization to your cancer and the ability to really express those proteins inside your immune cells.
And what do you believe will be the biggest breakthrough in cancer treatment over the next 5 years and over the next 10 years?
So I think in the next few years, we're going to keep having drugs more customized, like the one we just talked about, the Moderna drug, and there are many more out there. So I think we're going to continue to make good progress on the treatment side of the house. The thing that excites me almost more than drugs, and I say that as a guy in a drug company, is early detection. Liquid biopsy is one of them. There are many other technologies, but again, if you had the magic wand, you will want to see cancer really early. And so, as you know, for some cancers, you can use imaging, like, X-ray for lung cancer and other things. But the costs are expensive, compliance is low. Sometimes it happens too late. If you look at just the US data, you have a lot of people that are actually smokers that don't get X-ray scans of their lungs, whereas there are massive risk, of course, of getting lung cancer. And because we could have cancer in so many organs, if you think about it from a scale standpoint, at the healthcare system standpoint, to be able to go and look at different organs or run an MRI, which is very, very expensive. Sometimes, by the way, if you don't put an agent or whatever, might not see cancer early. So if you had a magic wand, I think you want the ability to have a liquid biopsy work, which is the ability to look at just a blood draw and be able to see signal from cancer cells in the blood and being able to, act on it early. I think that if you look at most cancer treatments, if you intervene early, you have a very, very good success rate of survival, 5 years, 10 years survival. Then, of course, if you get a stage 3 or, God forbid, a stage 4 cancer, where the chance of people is very, very slim. So that's the thing that excites me the most. I think we're getting very close. It works pretty well for some cancer. Some cancer, the rates of false negative are still too high. But I think even the scientific progress being made, that's one of the things I'm the most excited about in the next, 3 to 5 to 7 years is really the annual progress we're seeing on liquid biopsy and how I think we're getting really close to a world where we should be able to get as part of our annual checkup with, cholesterol and a few other tests to be able to get a liquid biopsy. Because if you have a cancer this year that you didn't have last year, it's most probably going to be in early stage where most probably there'll be a lot of drugs available that should work pretty well on you.
Stephane, I have a ton of questions to ask you and I will continue, but a lot of people are asking questions. I want to bring up the professor of oncology, Thanos Dimopoulos, first, then I will have George Koukos, the global expert on CAR T-cell, to ask you a question. Professor Dimopoulos?
Thank you very much, and especially Dr. Bancel for his great and inspirational presentation. My question is regarding the role of liquid biopsies, cell-free DNA, or circulating tumor cells. I mean, are we at a position right now when we detect, let's say, a possible tumor cell to be able to identify the origin, or we will need a lot of work on this?
Well, thank you for the question. And just to clarify, I'm not a doctor, so I want to be clear about that. We are getting, when you get a positive signal because of methylation, you are getting a signal about the organ of origin.
Okay.
The challenge today, if you look at a product like, for example, the Grail product that's available commercially, at least in America for now, when you get the report, you get the probability for each organ, and some organs you have very high probability if the technology is getting pretty good. Some other organ you have a low probability, so you might have a false negative. You might tell you have no cancer, but actually you have cancer. And some have also some false positive where it's the reverse. It tells you have cancer when you don't have it. But if you look at the trend over the last few years, which is very typical in technology, the trend is improving, of course.
Of
You have
course.
smart scientists working hard at it, and the technology and the image is getting stronger by the year. But the reports you get, he will tell you, and I know some people who got positive results. Unfortunately, that was confirmed as cancer, but at least they saw it earlier. He will tell you the organ type.
Okay. If I may, another very quick question. I mean, you mentioned the randomized trial in metastatic melanoma, where you used in one arm pembrolizumab, and in the other arm the personalized vaccine with pembrolizumab. Was this the addition? I mean, the combination with pembrolizumab was for regulatory purposes, or you believe that there was an additive or a synergistic effect on the function of the vaccine with the addition of pembrolizumab?
It's a good question. First was an ethical obligation, which is those are people that have a very serious disease, i.e. cancer. And as you will expect, not giving them a drug that has a good chance of working like Pembro and give them a drug that is experimental like our drug is of course something that from an ethical standpoint, we and the rest of industry cannot do. And our original scientific thesis was that they should improve on Pembro, which is so far we have shown again still in the phase 2, but the data are really, really intriguing if you look at the p-value of the study and so on, so in terms of statistical significance. Because we've had some response when we did the early phase 1, which was a dose finding where we gave a different dose as you typically do of people that were in monotherapy only with monoclonal product. Some had intriguing response. And so now that we've shown a benefit with Pembro, because as I mentioned, Pembro cannot be given to early stage cancer because the side effect profile is too high. We have a pathway from a regulatory standpoint to start to do phase 3 studies with our product as a monotherapy for early stage cancer. So that's, I think, is going to be quite interesting.
Okay, Thano, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to go to the global expert on CAR T-cell, George Koukos. George.
Stelio, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and honor. And Stephane, thank you for all the work you're doing. We are truly following this with incredible enthusiasm, I think, around the globe, both in the oncology community as well as the biotechnology community. So really hats off. I wanted to ask you 2 questions. One is more technical in a way. You chose to deliver your LNPs intramuscularly. How about intravenously to really target more broadly the immune system? And secondly, inevitably, even in an ideal world where we will prevent or intercept many early tumors, we will have lots of patients with advanced tumors. And so the question is, do you see cancer vaccines also to have a role in advanced disease? And how do they synergize perhaps with T-cell therapies?
Yes.
Thank you.
That's a great question, George. And thank you for all the work you do. And it's really a pleasure to talk to you today. So I think indeed, we are very intrigued by the late stage patients. As you know, because you follow the field closely, BioNTech has had some very intriguing data, which kind of is a good proof of concept that there might be something there. So we are working with Merck to also go later, as we're also going early, as we're also going with a lot of studies. So just a lot of clinical work right now. The IM versus IV question, we debated it a lot. And the reason we went IM, unlike for those who don't know, of course, George knows, BioNTech is IV, but not with a lipid, with a lipoplex, which is yet again a different technology, is what at the time a lot of data in monkeys that was published with Karolinska, where they had taken the monkeys down and look at the tissue of biodistribution of the lipids in a primate. And there were so many, like around 95%, if my memory is correct, of the mass of mRNA that we inject ended up being in the APCs. So this is something we knew. And because of what we saw in T cells in human testing of vaccine in infectious disease, we felt good about the fact that we were already getting a lot of mass in the T cells, in the APCs. Because we had never done the work IV, we were just worried about the ratio of the mass we're going to go into the immune cells versus going into other organs like liver and other organs. And so that made us prefer the IM route at the early stage of this program, just because we kind of had a good sense. We had a very, very strong amount of mass in the APCs.
Excellent. Thank you very much, George. We appreciate that. I would like to ask Professor Gravanis, although I don't want it too medical, but he asked a good question. Achillea, please tell us the question to Stephane Bancel.
Thank you very much, Stelios. Thank you, Dr. Bancel, for your presence and your time. I'm in the field of neurodegenerative diseases and brain aging. And you know very well that we have no idea on the etiology of almost all neurodegenerative conditions. So there is a very vibrant discussion in our field on using your wonderful technology for vaccines against Alzheimer's disease or multiple sclerosis. So what is your envision on this matter?
Achille, I have to tell you, this was one of the questions I wanted to ask Stephane. So you are at the forefront, pioneer as always. Please, Stephane.
Yes, so you're 100% right, which is all general understanding as a field of neurodegenerative disease is very, very weak compared to our field of medicine, even though a lot of people are making a lot of progress and a lot of work is going on in the field. So I'm always, as an entrepreneur, optimistic we're going to keep on making progress, which is why this is the biology unknown, coupled to the fact that we do not know today how to deliver mRNA into the brain, and mRNA still has a very short half-life, talking 24 hours. For a lot of those diseases, we are not sure it's the right way. But as you say, on the vaccine front, there's two very interesting work that is ongoing. One is we have an EBV vaccine in the clinic. I'm sure you're already aware of some of the work that has been published, including in Science, of link between EBV and MS. And so we have two EBV vaccines in the clinic right now. One is called mRNA 1189, which is a vaccine to be used as a prophylactic. The goal is first to show it reduce the mononucleosis infection, and then by following people, showing that it reduces the risk of MS. But that will take time, of course, for the second hypothesis. The other product is a more complex product called mRNA 1195, which is also in phase 2 in the clinic, that is intended to be given to people with MS disease. The idea there is a bit like in the field of HIV, it's more for your colleagues, I know you know that, is the idea that could you, through a vaccination with a treatment vaccine, could you take the viral load of EBV to undetectable levels like we do with antiviral with HIV? We have shown so far that in people that are seropositive to EBV, meaning you can find EBV in their blood, by one injection, we can get to 2 years of undetectable level of EBV. So for EBV positive people, we don't know how long it lasts. We're still collecting the data. I don't know if it's 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. We don't know. But that would be also quite interesting because you could see a treatment that is a vaccine every few years. You can just get at the pharmacy. That could help people. So that's the two approaches we have. I'm sure you're also highly aware of some of the data in terms of Alzheimer's disease and HSV. And of course, there's a genetic component that is well known. And also, a component around sugar. And as some people might know on the call, I know you know that, some doctors calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. So it's just a lot of pieces that are kind of converging. And we have also an HSV vaccine that is also in the clinic. So it could be also another interesting angle in that case for potentially Alzheimer's.
Excellent. Stephane, thank you, Achillea. Stephane, I would like to ask you a few questions now relating to cancer and longevity. Aging is increasingly being understood as a disease that can be targeted. 8 billion people, all of us, suffer from the same disease. We are aging, and I want to stay young, Stephane. Could mRNA technology be used to delay or even reverse the effects of aging? What challenge do you face in developing such therapies on aging?
Sure. So now we're going to a totally different field. So on aging, as many of you know, there's a lot of work happening both in the public sector, in academia, as well as in the private sector through some startup. One of the biggest issues of the field today is that aging is not classified by the FDA as a disease. And so it's tough to run clinical trials on that dimension. And the field is still very early in terms of understanding which biology do you code in the mRNA, because at the end of the day, mRNA is just a coding system. And so there's some hypotheses, there's some interesting clinical hypothesis or scientific hypothesis of what you could code into an mRNA or a cocktail of mRNA. If you think about the Yamanaka factor, it's an easy one that most of you are aware of, which basically take any cell back into a stem cell. You could code the Yamanaka factors in different mRNAs and put them together. We have done things like that. We have changed cell fate in animals. We have turned some mouse livers, maybe a third of a liver turned into pancreas cell. So you can start to think about a lot of applications like that. So I think it's a question of understanding better the biology of aging that then can be targeted with drugs, whether it's a small molecule, protein, or mRNA, depending on the application and what you're trying to do from a scientific standpoint.
Stephane, with the advent of the liquid biopsies and genomic screening, how do you envision integrating the mRNA technology into preventive medicine to detect and treat age-related diseases earlier before the irreversible damage of age 3 or 4 or whatever damage occurs? Are you thinking about this?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. If you look at diagnostic first, and then we can go into prevention in a second time. In diagnostic, again, if I had a magic wand, I would want to know, of course, the genome of somebody is kind of the hard drive coding for all the information in their body. I have a little story later if you guys are interested that actually by just doing some genomic testing, I was told I have a rare disease on my kidney, which I'm lucky there's a small molecule drug that actually has corrected the issue, but I'm taking the pill every day for the rest of my life. But I'm super thankful I was told, or I might have actually end up on dialysis. So gene is very important. Then is, of course, protein profile, which protein are expressed, and then mRNA in between. So there's a lot of work going on. And I know, for example, there's a company in the US that is trying for liquid biopsy to add to circulating tumor DNA, ctDNA, to also add mRNA expression. So that's why I think this is an angle in terms of diagnostic. Ideally, you will want to know frequently people's profile in what many of you have read as the genomics, proteomics, protein, genomics, and also epigenomics in terms of which genes are expressed through mRNA. And then on the prevention side of the house is, of course, the vaccines. If you think about it, if you combine flu, COVID, RSV, and pneumonia, so viral or bacterial vaccine, if you combine those four in terms of hospitalization and death rate, you have those vaccines that exist today. And so I think as we age, as our immune system weakens, being up to date on COVID, flu, RSV, and also pneumonia vaccine, and Merck, our colleagues at Merck, just launched a new pneumonia vaccine in the US last summer with a much broader coverage than the Prevnar vaccine from Pfizer. And so I think this is one thing that I tell my friends who are aging and say, hey, what are the things I should do? I mean, one of the things you should do definitely is just get up to date on your respiratory vaccine, including the pneumonia vaccine, because those tools are available. They're pretty safe if you look at the risk reward. And if you already take all those risks out of a picture, you're going to age better.
About aging better, Stephane, a few years ago, I want to ask you a personal question that affects all of us. You introduced me to intermittent fasting and told me how important is intermittent fasting for the autophagy. The concept that when we don't have insulin in our blood, it helps dramatically the autophagy aspect. Are you still a strong proponent of intermittent fasting for all the people follow us to follow your advice?
So again, let me say again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm telling you what I think and what I do with myself. You guys have to consult with your own doctor before you make any decision. But I believe that as we age, the needs of our body become very, very different. And I think as we age, we need more repair time than when we have a young body. And so I continue to believe that choices on nutrition, what we eat, choices and what we don't eat, which is most important in today's world, choices about when we eat, going back to the timing, and even in which order we eat things, has been shown to have a huge impact on people's metabolism. And so I continue to believe that intermittent fasting is a very interesting tool that I continue to practice. I've even gone into fasting mimicking diets that some of you might have heard from Professor Longo from USC, that has a product available on Amazon called Prolong, which is a 5-day plant-based fasting mimicking diet. So I think that we are definitely in a world where we eat too much garbage. And as we age, we have to be much more careful of helping our body, getting it to rest time to be able to do some important repair.
Let me ask you a question. If we're going to look 10 or 20 years ahead, how do you envision the world of medicine and health, particularly in the terms of longevity? What do you see as the major breakthroughs that you will think they will be having made in the next few years?
So I don't think it's a silver bullet. I think it's a set of tools that will enable us first to better understand biology. If you think about it, we know so much more about the human body and how it works today than we did 5 years ago, than we did 100 years ago or more. and it's really going exponential. And so I believe, that's a personal belief, that we are years away, not decades away, from understanding how most of the body works, because it's a finite problem. The number of cells we have is a large number, but it's a finite number. The number of genes we have is around 22,000. Again, it's a finite number. And the number of metabolites we have in our body. If you look at all those things, it's a very complex problem. It's a very complex machine. But I believe it is not black magic. I believe things happen for a reason, sometimes very complex, nonlinear system. And so I think one of the first things that is going to happen, Stelios, is we're going to get to a world where we're going to understand more and more what's happening in our body. And thanks to tools like I spoke about, genetics, sequencing, RNA, and proteomics, we're going to be able to get a very good sense of what's happening in our body in almost real time. And then the other big thing is the ability to do a lot of tests cheap. There is a private clinic in Paris called ZOI, Z-O-I, that does like a 2-hour checkup, which I think is one of the best clinic out there today in terms of prevention of disease. They do 200 blood work and a lot of other tests, microbiome, a lot of other things. And so I think if you get to a world where you can, at a good price point, thanks to technology, look at a lot of biomarkers at the same time, several times per year, especially as you age, and to correct through either nutrition or other activities or supplement to keep your body in balance, I think it's going to be a big thing. The other piece, I think, is AI in terms of making sure all the doctors have the most up-to-date knowledge. It has been published that it takes, on average, around 10 years from a new scientific discovery to most GPs being aware of that new discovery. As you know, it's complicated to be a GP. You're very busy seeing a lot of patients. There is so much new information and new papers coming out literally every day. The medical knowledge is accelerating. And so it's really hard, if not impossible, for most GP to stay up to date to all the clinical trial, to all the scientific discoveries. And so if you're able through technology to give an assistant to every doctor, so when I go see a doctor and they have all those data about me, that they can really give me the best scientific knowledge and not the scientific knowledge of 5 or 7 years ago. I think all those things combined is going to get us to a world pretty close, I'm talking years, not decades, where we're going to be able to find imbalance in the body early and be able to, again, through different activities, including sometimes drugs, rebalance the body or be able to move disease back to from pre-disease to no disease stage.
Stephane, obviously we see a big number of longevity clinics in the United States. We're also trying to do several things here in Greece in an important way, and I've talked to your people in Paris. You mentioned the biomarkers. In your opinion, which are the most promising biomarkers for aging? And would your company contribute more precise diagnostics or therapies to address these biomarkers? Which you think are the more important ones?
So again, it's a tough one. So a few that I pay attention to, there's all the cardiac biomarkers, and especially in my case, I know it's in my gene, but I knew from my family history, one branch of my family has had a lot of heart attack and strokes. So I've been very careful at looking at all the cardiac biomarker, and the obvious one, LDL, HDL, and in my case, Lp(a) is something I keep an eye on. As we know, inflammation is really important for aging and as a role in cancer, as a role in autoimmune disease activation from our genes. So I look at my CRP, my HS, high sensitivity CRP, very closely to try to keep it as low as I can. And in my case, because of my genetic disease in my kidney, I'm looking at uric acid, but that's a very personal thing because that's a byproduct of my genetic mutation of my kidneys. And so I think those are the things. Of course, immune health is important. Making sure your white cells are in a good place is also something important. And there is some, I think, vitamins that we are more and more realizing their criticality. Like B12, I know, is something that a lot of people are paying attention to in terms of making sure we get a lot of B12. I think there's also a change of opinion between the recommended daily quantities of B12 and what some people are recommending to do much more. Of course, vitamin D is another important one because of it's part of immune strength and immune health. Another one I look at, and now that's becoming a lot, is the omega-3s and the different constituents of them, because it's important for brain's health. So those are the type of things I kind of look at out of the 200 plus biomarkers I get done twice per year.
Excellent. You mentioned about the immune system, which we know it's so vital for preventing so many diseases and cancers. Do you see the mRNA technology as a potential to enhance the immune responses in older adults? Because as we age, obviously immune system weakens, particularly in preventing age-related diseases. Is this something that mRNA could help?
Yes, I think there's a couple of interesting paths. One that we talked about very publicly is we have submitted to the FDA a new COVID vaccine that is quite a different design from the original one. Not in terms of a sequence of a mutation that's circulating, that is an easy part. And it has shown to be higher efficacy in people 65 and above. It was designed for the elderly. Hopefully, it will be in the market for next season. And then in the autoimmune disease space, we have made a lot of progress in terms of being able to kind of restore homeostasis of the balance of immune system, which is an important piece with autoimmune disease. And so I could see us most probably as early as this year having in the clinic autoimmune disease drugs that basically are aiming at re-stabilizing, recreating the homeostasis of the immune system. And that I think would be a pretty cool thing versus most drugs on the market. If you have an autoimmune disease, you take the drug forever, which we don't like taking drugs forever. I'm a big believer that less drug is better, even though I'm in the drug business. But the key is to help the body. The body is in imbalance to get back into balance.
Stephane, in longevity, we say the 4 horsemen killer are heart, cancer, metabolic syndrome, and neurodegeneration, Alzheimer, Parkinson, dementia. And we have 5 pillars in the industry to address them: the nutrition, the exercise, the sleep, the mental health, and 5th is the supplements. Out of the supplements that a lot of people suggest, from NMN, NAD, spermidine, Mitopure, metformin, is there any supplements that you think are the most important ones that our audience here should use?
So again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not your doctor, so you should talk to your doctor. What I can tell you is I use NADs because I think they're very important for mitochondria's health, and keeping mitochondria healthy are super important as we age. Because again, think about it like an old car. A brand new car works much better than an old car. And so you need to help a little bit. I think in terms of supplements, again, it should be science-based, based on some biomarker and some work done on you. And then the other piece about supplements is, of course, the quality of the supplements. As you know, the supplements industry, unfortunately, does not have a quality control, legal regulatory requirement that we have in the drug business. And so a lot of time, a product you might buy online or the pharmacy store might tell you there's X gram or milligram of the supplements you're looking for. But if you get it tested, it's actually not there. Sometimes the range is even bottle to bottle or batch to batch are very, very different. So I think that once you get a good sense with your doctor or what supplement you should use, and as we age, I anticipate that we all need more and more supplements. I think the quality of a supplement is a question that I think a lot of people don't spend enough time making sure we have the right data, because taking a supplement that doesn't really work or is half the dose is not going to help you the way you think it is.
Excellent. As you know, being also a Harvard Business School fellow Harvard Finance graduate, we always keep our timing and our promises. I told you it will be a hard spot, stopping at 7. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Stephane Bancel for sharing his invaluable insights and addressing some of the most pressing health issues of our time. Today's discussion reminds me of the critical role that innovation plays in shaping the future of healthcare, of our health span, of our longevity. As we conclude, let us carry forward the spirit of curiosity, progress, and determination to push the boundaries of what is possible in medicine. Hopefully, we'll reach the 120 years. Stephane, thank you for your remarkable leadership and unwavering commitment to improving global health. And to all of you, thank you all for your engagement in participation in today's enlightening conversations. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, everybody. Stay well. Good night. Have a good day.